The stray brought her to his door. His whole herd brought him to his knees. The dog showed up 3 days before she did. I found him on the south side of the water tank, pressed into the shadow of the concrete base like he was trying to disappear into it. Half-grown, ribs showing through a coat that had been brindled once but was mostly mud and burrs now. He didn't growl, didn't run, just looked at me with those yellow eyes that have a way of saying, "I know what I am, and I know what you could do to me, and I'm still here." I set my fence pliers down on the tank lid and looked at him a long time. I've put down animals that needed putting down. I've walked away from things that were going to die whether I helped or not. But there's something about a creature that doesn't beg and doesn't run, just holds its ground and looks at you steady, that I've never been able to walk away from. I gave him half my lunch sandwich. That was the beginning of it. My name is Cal Rourke. I run cattle on a stretch of high plains in the eastern shadow of the Sangre de Cristos, a piece of country that looks like God made it on a hard day and didn't see any reason to apologize. Red clay breaks, juniper draws, grass that goes silver in the fall and stays silver through winter. 1,100 acres and about 340 head, depending on the year. I've run it alone since my father died 8 years ago, and before that the two of us ran it together for 12 years since my mother left, and before that all three of us ran it in a way that I only understood much later was already coming apart at the seams. I was 51 years old that October. I had a good dog who died in the spring, a decent horse who was going on 20 and starting to show it, and a list of things needing fixing that was longer than the list of things that worked. The windmill at the north end threw a bearing in August, and I'd been hauling water up there by trailer twice a week ever since. The calves were weaned and sorted, but the sale weights were going to come in soft. We'd had a dry summer, pastures short, cattle not gaining like they should. The truck needed ball joints. I needed a good night's sleep, and had not had one in longer than I could clearly say. What I had, though, was the land, and the cattle on it, and a sense, bone-deep the way some things get, that I was in the right place, doing the right work, and that mattered even when nothing else seemed to. The dog I named Pryor. He was sleeping on my porch by that first night, which I told myself I hadn't invited, and which I also hadn't discouraged. By the second day he was following me at heel like he'd been bred to it, which he may well have been before whatever happened to him happened. He was cattle quiet around the herd, didn't startle them, didn't chase, just moved with me and watched everything with those yellow eyes. The third day, a truck came down my road. It was a white 3/4 ton, older model, one fender a different shade than the rest. It came slow, like the driver wasn't sure of the turnoff, and pulled into my yard and sat there a minute before the door opened. I was at the barn by then, forking hay, and I watched from the dim of the doorway. She got out and looked at Pryor first. Not at me, not at the house, at the dog, who had gone to the middle of the yard and stopped, tail working slow. She crouched down right there in the dirt and put her hands out, palm up, and waited. Pryor went to her. She was maybe 45, 47. Dark hair going gray at the temples, cut short. Jeans worn white at the knees, boots that had seen some miles. She wasn't small, stood close to my height when she straightened up, one hand still on the dog's back, and the way she moved when she stood told me her knees hurt some. She looked at the barn then, and at me in the doorway, and she didn't look away. "That's my dog," she said. Not accusatory, just a statement of fact, offered the same way you'd offer the weather. I set the fork against the wall and walked out. He came up on my water tank 3 days ago looking like he hadn't eaten in a week. He got out when I stopped for fuel in Cimarron. I've been following the road he would have taken. She looked down at Pryor. He does that, follows the road, got a sense of direction, just not much sense otherwise. Cimarron's a long way. Yes, it is. She said it without complaint. Just the fact of it. I looked at the dog. Pryor looked back at me. He was leaning against her leg now, but his eyes were on mine, and I had the strange thought that he'd done this on purpose, brought her here, which I knew was foolish and couldn't quite shake. "You want to come in?" I said. "I've got coffee." She considered that the way practical people consider things, actually thought about it for a second rather than just saying yes or no out of manners. Then, sure. Her name was Della Vaz. She was from Taos originally, had been in Colorado for 20 years, was headed back now. She'd had a horse property outside Cortez, sold it when the partnership, which is what she called it, and I didn't ask, fell apart. She was going back to Taos to her sister's place, figuring out next steps. She drank her coffee black and didn't put her elbows on the table. She asked about the land, how many acres, what I ran, how the summer had been. Real questions, not polite ones. The kind someone asks when they actually want to know. I told her about the short grass, the soft weights, the windmill bearing. She asked what it would take to fix the windmill, and I told her parts and time, which I had enough of one and not the other. She nodded at that like it meant something to her. Pryor lay under the table between us. When she moved her foot, he moved with it. She stayed for lunch. That was my doing. I put canned soup on the stove without really deciding to, and set a bowl in front of her, and she ate it without making anything of it. After, she helped me carry the water trailer up to the north pasture, sitting in the passenger seat quiet while I drove, watching the country go by. When we got there and I started working the hose, she got out and steadied the tank coupler without being asked, holding it the right way, no instruction needed. "You've done this," I said. "I've done most things," she said. We got back to the house late afternoon. The light was going low and orange off the Sangers, the kind of light that makes the red clay look almost warm. She stood by her truck with Pryor at her feet, and I stood by the barn door, and there was a beat of quiet. "You could stay the night," I said. "Long drive to Taos, not much point starting it at this hour." She looked at the mountains, at the light on them. "You've got a spare room." "I've got my father's room, it's clean." She looked at me then, the same way she'd looked at me from across the yard the first time, straight, not weighing anything, just looking. "All right," she said. "I want to tell you what the next week was, because I don't think I can say it well, and I've been trying to figure out how to say it for going on 2 years. She was supposed to leave the next morning. She left the morning after that. Then she called from a gas station in Springer and said she'd thought about the windmill bearing, and she knew a parts supplier in Raton who'd have what I needed, and she was closer to Raton than I was. Did I want her to stop? I said yes. She came back with the bearing and 2 more I hadn't asked for but would need. We put in 3 days on that windmill, the 2 of us, cold mornings and 1 day of rain that turned everything slippery and slow. She went up the tower with me and held the wrench when I needed a hand free, and she didn't complain about the height or the cold, just worked. The cattle got used to her before I did. In the way cattle have, they settled around her presence faster than seemed reasonable, the older cows especially, the ones who'd been through enough seasons to know who was steady. I'd watch her walking the fence line in the early morning, Pryor at her side, and the cows would drift toward her along the inside of the wire, just to be near. She was going to Taos. She said that. She had her sister and next steps to figure out and a life to reconstruct. I didn't argue with any of that. I just kept working and let her help when she offered, and didn't ask what the other mornings were going to look like. The thing happened on a Thursday, 10 days after she'd first pulled into my yard. I'd taken a group of heifers down to the south pen to sort out 3 that were showing signs of pink eye. It was getting on toward evening, cooling fast the way it does when the sun drops below the ridge. I had the sort almost done, 2 of the 3 heifers in the catch pen, when one of them hit the gate wrong and the hinge let go. Old hinge, one I'd noticed and meant to replace. Gate swung and caught me across the left knee and put me down hard in the pen dirt, and the heifer went over me and back into the main pen with the others. I lay there a minute. The knee wasn't broken, I could tell that from the pain, which was bad but not that kind of bad. I got up and finished the sort on one leg, which took twice as long and hurt the whole way. By the time I got the 3 heifers penned, and the gate wired shut with what I had in my pocket, the knee had swelled up inside my jeans enough that I could feel the fabric pulling. I limped back toward the barn. Della was there. She'd heard the gate, or she'd been coming to help with the sort, or she'd just known, I don't know which. She was standing at the barn entrance with a hand lamp because it was dark enough now to need one, and she looked at the way I was walking and didn't say anything. Just came to my right side and put her shoulder under my arm, steady as a post. I let her. That's what I want to tell you. After 8 years of holding everything together alone, I let her. We got to the house and she sat me in the kitchen chair and pulled my boot off and worked the jeans up over the knee, which had gone purple and swollen and ugly. She went to the sink and got a clean cloth and cold water and came back and put it against the joint, firm, not fussing over it. She looked at it the way she looked at everything, straight, no drama. "You need to stay off it tomorrow," she said. "I've got feed to run." "I'll run the feed." I looked at her. She was still crouched beside the chair, the wet cloth against my knee, not looking at me, just at the knee. "Della." She looked up. "Why are you still here?" She held my eyes for a moment. Then she sat back on her heels and put the cloth on the table and was quiet long enough that I thought she might not answer. "I've been trying to figure that out," she said. "I've been telling myself it's the windmill, and then it's the heifers, and then it's the bearing on the north tank that's going to go next. I can hear it." She looked at her hands. "But I think it's really that I haven't been anywhere that felt like it was running right in a long time, like a real operation, something that's held together and cared for even when it's hard." She looked at me again. "This place is held together, Cal. You hold it together." I didn't know I was looking for that until I got here. I didn't say anything. I'm not sure I could have. She reached out and put her hand against the side of my face. Not a romantic gesture, or maybe it was, but first it was just steady, just a hand that knew how to hold something, and looked at me the way you look at a piece of ground you're thinking about putting roots into. Like you're seeing it all the way down. "I'm not going to Taos yet," she said, "if that's all right." I put my hand over hers. That was my answer. It was 2 months before she brought the last of her things down from Colorado, and 4 months before she stopped saying she was staying for a while and just said she was staying. She's particular about her coffee and has opinions about fence wire gauge that are different from mine and mostly right. Pryor sleeps between us on the floor beside the bed, which I didn't agree to and can't seem to change. The Sangers go white in November. The herd comes through the cold better when there are 2 of us watching them, 2 sets of eyes, 2 pairs of hands, someone who knows what they're looking for on the north end while I'm working the south. The cattle know her now the way cattle know the people who belong with them. They don't drift toward the fence line when she walks it anymore. She's just part of the day. The bearing on the north tank did go. She was right about that. We replaced it on a cold December morning with our breath making clouds and Pryor trying to help by chewing the old bolt casing, which was useless and made her laugh. A real laugh. The kind that comes up from somewhere low and doesn't make any apology. I stood at the base of that windmill with my hands going numb in my gloves and listened to her laugh and looked out at the herd in the winter pasture, the red clay breaks and the silver grass and the Sangers behind all of it white and still, and I thought, this is the whole of it, this right here. The land, the cattle, the work that holds together because someone does the holding. And a woman beside me who saw what the holding was worth.